I'm about to tell you something you won't believe. Something that changed everything I thought I knew about history, religion, and our place in the universe. It's a story that still echoes in the quiet corners of my mind, a constant hum of disbelief and revelation. I've lived a solitary life, tucked away in an isolated cabin in the Judean desert, not far from the ancient, whispering waters of the Jordan River. My days were usually spent in quiet contemplation, observing the stark beauty of the landscape, and occasionally venturing into nearby towns for supplies. I sought solitude, a retreat from the clamor of the modern world, a place where the past felt tangible and the future was a distant, irrelevant concept. But then, one night, the future, or perhaps something far beyond it, landed right on my doorstep. The desert night was unusually cold, a biting wind whipping through the wadis, carrying with it the scent of dust, and something else, something metallic and strange. I was just about to turn in, the last embers of my fire casting long dancing shadows on the rough-hewn walls of my cabin, when I heard it, a sound unlike anything I had ever encountered. It wasn't the howl of a jackal or the distant drone of an occasional military plane. This was a low, resonant thrumming, followed by a sickening crunch, echoing from somewhere out in the desolate expanse. My first instinct was fear, a primal urge to barricade myself inside. But then, curiosity, that insidious whisper in the human spirit, began to override my apprehension. What could possibly make such a sound in this ancient, forgotten land? Armed with an old flashlight and a healthy dose of trepidation, I ventured out. The wind tugged at my clothes, and the moon, a sliver of silver in the inky blackness, offered little illumination. I walked for what felt like an eternity, the crunching sound still ringing in my ears, guiding me deeper into the desert's embrace. And then I saw it. Not the source of the sound, not yet, but a faint pulsating light in the distance, like a dying star fallen to earth. As I drew closer, the scene that unfolded before me defied every logical explanation. There, half buried in the sand, was a craft, sleek, impossibly smooth, and unlike any aircraft I had ever seen. It was damaged, clearly, a gaping fissure marring its pristine surface, and wisps of an ethereal, iridescent smoke curled from its broken shell. And then I saw the being. It lay crumpled beside the wreckage, its form elongated and slender, its skin a pale, almost translucent blue. Shimmering faintly in the dim light, its limbs were too long, its head slightly larger than human proportions, with large almond-shaped eyes that were entirely black, pools of infinite depth. It was undeniably non-human, an alien presence in every sense of the word. My fear spiked, a cold dread seizing my heart. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to flee this impossible reality. This was a nightmare made flesh, the creature from the darkest corners of science fiction. But then those eyes, those vast black eyes, fixed on me with an intensity that pierced through my terror. They conveyed not menace but something far more profound: pain, desperation, and an intelligence that was both ancient and profound. There was a plea there, a silent, desperate call for help that transcended language, reaching directly into the deepest parts of my consciousness. It was injured, grievously so, a dark fluid seeping from a wound in its side, glistening with that same iridescent quality as the smoke from its craft. Its breathing was shallow, ragged, a faint wheezing sound that was agonizingly close to human. My internal conflict raged. Fear warred with an overwhelming, almost irrational urge to help. What was I? A simple hermit in the desert, doing standing over an alien? My mind raced, grappling with the sheer impossibility of the situation. This was beyond anything I had ever imagined, beyond anything humanity had ever officially encountered. Yet the creature's gaze held me captive, a silent testament to its suffering. It was a being, a sentient life form, in desperate need. And in that moment, the fundamental human impulse to aid the vulnerable superseded all fear, all logic, all rational thought. Against every shred of common sense, against every warning bell screaming in my head, I knew I couldn't leave it there to die. The desert was unforgiving, and whatever had brought it here, whatever had caused this catastrophic crash, would surely claim its life if I did nothing. My hands, trembling, reached out. Its skin was cool to the touch, surprisingly delicate. With immense effort, for it was heavier than its slender frame suggested, I managed to half drag, half carry the injured being back to my cabin. The journey was a blur of exertion and adrenaline, my mind still reeling from the impossible discovery. I pushed aside the overturned furniture, cleared a space near the fire, and gently laid it down on a makeshift bed of old blankets. It wasn't from Earth, that much was clear. Its very presence defied all known physics, all established biology. But what it told me later, as it slowly began to heal and communicate, that's where the real story begins. That's where the threads of history, religion, and the cosmic tapestry began to unravel and reweave themselves into a pattern I never could have conceived. It had been at the Jordan River, and it had found something there. Something incredibly old and powerful. Something that connected this alien being, this cosmic traveler, to the very heart of human spiritual belief. The implications of that single statement, whispered telepathically into my mind much later, were staggering. The Jordan River, a place steeped in millennia of human history and religious significance, a place of baptisms and prophets, a focal point of faith for billions. What could an extraterrestrial being find there that would be so significant? What ancient secret lay beneath its waters, or along its banks, that could draw a visitor from the stars? If you're ready for a story that will challenge everything you thought you knew, everything you've been taught about our past, our present, and our future, then stick around. You won't regret it. This is just the beginning of a journey that will redefine reality itself. The creature, now resting somewhat more comfortably on the makeshift bed, still looked utterly out of place in my rustic cabin. Its breathing remained shallow, a faint, rhythmic whisper that was the only sound breaking the desert's profound silence. I sat by the fire, watching it, a strange mix of fear, awe, and a burgeoning sense of responsibility churning within me. How was I going to communicate with it? What did it eat? How did I even begin to help something so profoundly alien? These questions swirled in my mind, a frantic, unanswerable chorus. I tried speaking to it, tentatively at first, then more clearly, in English, then in Hebrew, even a few phrases of Arabic I'd picked up over the years. No response. Its large black eyes remained closed, its slender body still. Days bled into nights. I nursed it as best I could, offering water, trying to coax it to take some of the dried fruit and nuts I kept stocked. It remained unresponsive, though I noticed subtle shifts in its coloring, a slow, almost imperceptible healing process underway. My initial terror had begun to subside, replaced by a deep, quiet fascination. I found myself talking to it, narrating my daily routine, describing the desert outside, the constellations visible through the cabin's small window. It was a strange, one-sided conversation, yet it felt strangely comforting, as if my voice, even if not understood, offered some measure of solace. Then, on the third night, something shifted. As I sat by its side, checking its wound, a strange sensation bloomed in my mind. It wasn't a sound, nor an image, but a feeling, a gentle probing, a curious, tentative touch against the edges of my thoughts. I recoiled instinctively, startled, but the sensation was not aggressive. It was inquisitive, like a feather brushing against my consciousness. I looked at the creature. Its eyes were still closed, but a faint, ethereal glow emanated from its forehead, pulsing softly. The probing intensified, not painful, but insistent. Then images began to flash in my mind, quick, fragmented, like snapshots from a dream. I saw stars, swirling galaxies, impossibly intricate geometric patterns, and then a sense of vast, unimaginable distances traveled. It was trying to communicate. It was reaching out, not with words, but with pure thought, with shared sensation. It was establishing a telepathic link, a bridge between two vastly different forms of intelligence. The process was slow, arduous, like learning a new language without a dictionary, relying solely on context and intuition. Gradually, painstakingly, a rudimentary form of communication began to emerge. It couldn't speak, not in any human sense, but it could project concepts, feelings, and memories directly into my mind. I learned, through these fragmented mental transmissions, that its species didn't use vocalizations as we did. Their primary mode of communication was telepathic, a complex tapestry of shared thoughts and emotions. As it grew stronger, the clarity of these mental images improved, becoming more vivid, more coherent. It conveyed a name, or rather a complex series of resonant frequencies and light patterns that were utterly unpronounceable by human vocal cords. It was a name that spoke of its origins, its lineage, its very essence. Knowing I couldn't replicate it, I offered it a simple Earth name, one that felt fitting for a traveler from the stars, a name that evoked both mystery and wisdom. Kael, I whispered, and I felt a faint, almost imperceptible resonance of acceptance in my mind. Kael. Through Kael's mental projections, I began to see glimpses of its homeworld. It was a place of breathtaking beauty, bathed in the light of twin suns, teeming with crystalline cities that seemed to float in the sky. Its people were beings of profound intellect and advanced technology, living in harmony with their environment, focused on exploration and understanding. They were not conquerors, but observers, dedicated to mapping the cosmos, studying the myriad forms of life and civilization that peppered the universe. Kael was one of these explorers, part of a scientific mission. Its purpose, it conveyed, was to study temporal anomalies and energy echoes, residual energetic signatures left behind by significant historical events across various planets. Earth, it explained, was a particularly rich source of such echoes, a planet whose timeline was unusually volatile and significant in the grand cosmic scheme. Kael had been drawn here by a powerful ancient energy signature, a resonance unlike any it had encountered before. The crash, it showed me, was an unfortunate accident. Its craft, designed for deep space travel and atmospheric re-entry, had been unexpectedly hit by an unknown energy surge, a localized burst of immense power emanating directly from the planet's surface. It had crippled its systems, forcing an emergency descent. It had managed to guide the damaged vessel to a relatively remote area, but the impact had been severe, leaving it stranded and gravely injured. The surge, Kael emphasized, originated from the Jordan River, That was the focal point, the epicenter of the temporal anomaly it had been tasked to investigate. It had been attempting to get closer, to pinpoint the source, when its craft was struck. The river, sacred to humanity, was clearly sacred in a cosmic sense too, a beacon drawing attention from across the stars. This realization sent a shiver down my spine. The Jordan River, not just a geographical feature, but a nexus of profound cosmic significance. As Kale slowly regained its strength and our telepathic link deepened, a peculiar bond began to form between us. The initial fear I felt had completely dissipated, replaced by a growing sense of trust and companionship. Kyle was not a threat. It was a refugee, stranded and vulnerable, relying entirely on my aid. In turn, I found myself increasingly reliant on its silent, profound insights, its alien perspective on the world I thought I knew. My isolated existence had been irrevocably altered, transformed by the presence of this silent, thoughtful visitor from beyond the stars. I was no longer alone, and the universe suddenly felt a lot smaller and infinitely more mysterious. As Kyle slowly regained its strength and our telepathic link deepened, a peculiar bond began to form between us. The initial fear I felt had completely dissipated, replaced by a growing sense of trust and companionship. Cal was not a threat. It was a refugee, stranded and vulnerable, relying entirely on my aid. In turn, I found myself increasingly reliant on its silent, profound insights, its alien perspective on the world I thought I knew. My isolated existence had been irrevocably altered, transformed by the presence of this silent, thoughtful visitor from beyond the stars. I was no longer alone, and the universe suddenly felt a lot smaller and infinitely more mysterious. Kyle's physical healing process was slow but steady, a testament to its alien physiology and resilience. My daily routine now revolved around its care. I brought it fresh water, carefully collected from the spring further up the wadi, and prepared simple, natural foods from my pantry, mostly fruits, nuts, and grains, hoping they would be digestible for its unique biology. To my surprise, Kyle seemed to absorb the nutrients, not through consumption in the human sense, but through a subtle energetic transfer. It would hold the food, and a faint glow would emanate from its hands, a process that left the food desiccated but intact. It was a fascinating, almost mystical interaction that further blurred the lines between science and the inexplicable. As its body mended, Kale's mind became more active, more inquisitive. It began to absorb information from my mind with astonishing speed. It wasn't just learning, it was devouring. My memories, my knowledge of human history, the nuances of language, the complexities of our cultures. All of it became accessible to Kale. It would often project images or concepts into my mind, seeking clarification, asking silent questions that resonated deep within my consciousness. It was like having a living, breathing encyclopedia that could access my entire mental library, cross-referencing and analyzing with a speed that humbled me. It learned English, Hebrew, and even ancient Aramaic phrases I had picked up from old texts, all within days, not through rote memorization, but through a profound, intuitive understanding of linguistic structures and cultural contexts. In turn, Kale began to share its own advanced knowledge with me. Through intricate mental projections, it unveiled concepts of physics that defied our current understanding, cosmologies that painted a picture of a universe far vaster and more interconnected than I had ever imagined. It spoke of dimensional shifts, not as theoretical constructs, but as navigable realities, and of timeline echoes, not as metaphors, but as tangible, energetic residues of past and potential futures. The true nature of reality, as Cale presented it, was less a fixed entity and more a fluid, multi-layered tapestry, constantly woven and rewoven by conscious intent and cosmic forces. My simple desert cabin became an impromptu university, with the universe as our curriculum, and Cale as my extraordinary, silent professor. Cale developed a particular fascination with Earth's ancient texts, especially the religious ones I kept in my cabin. My small collection included an old, leather-bound King James Bible, a few historical accounts of the region, and even some fragmented philosophical treatises from various spiritual traditions. Cale would mentally pore over these texts through my mind, its alien perspective offering startling new interpretations of familiar passages. It seemed to be searching for patterns, for connections, for deeper meanings that human readers had perhaps overlooked for millennia. It was particularly drawn to the narratives surrounding the Jordan River, the prophecies, the miracles, the spiritual significance. As Cale's strength returned, so did its ability to sense the energy signature that had drawn it to Earth. It explained that the signature from the Jordan River was not merely an echo but was growing stronger, more complex, almost as if it were actively resonating, intensifying. It described it as a temporal knot, a point where multiple timelines converged, creating a powerful, almost gravitational pull on higher dimensional energies. It was no longer just a residual trace. It was an active, pulsating phenomenon. This intensification brought with it a palpable shift in Cale's demeanor. It became increasingly agitated, its mental projections tinged with a sense of urgency. It sensed that something important was about to happen, or had already happened, related to this energy. It was as if the universe itself was holding its breath, awaiting a pivotal moment. The serene, observational detachment I had come to associate with Cale was replaced by a focused, almost anxious intensity. It was clear that whatever was unfolding at the Jordan River was of paramount importance, not just for Earth, but perhaps for the wider cosmic tapestry. Then, one evening, as the desert sky turned to hues of purple and orange, Cale projected an image into my mind with startling clarity. It wasn't a memory from its homeworld, nor a lesson in astrophysics. It was a specific, tangible object. Cale revealed that it had found something just before its craft was hit. At the bottom of the Jordan River, near where the energy signature was strongest, it had located a small, smooth, dark stone-like object. It was unassuming in appearance, roughly palm-sized, almost obsidian in its darkness. But in Cale's mental image, the stone radiated a subtle, warm light, a faint internal luminescence that hinted at immense power contained within its mundane shell. It was this object, Cale conveyed, that had been the immediate target of its investigation, the reason it had been so close to the river when disaster struck. My growing unease deepened. An alien, drawn across countless light years to a specific location on Earth, finds an artifact in the very waters that are considered sacred by billions. The implications were staggering, almost terrifying. What connection could this seemingly simple stone have to the profound spiritual history of humanity? What knowledge did it hold? And why was an extraterrestrial being the one to find it? The questions piled up, each one more profound than the last, challenging every preconceived notion I held about faith, history, and our place in the universe. Cale's silent, urgent gaze told me that this small, dark stone was far more than just a relic. It was the key. The object wasn't merely a stone, Cale's projections clarified. It was a temporal anchor, or as it further refined the concept, a memory crystal. It was a device, ancient beyond human comprehension, designed to record and store vast quantities of information, not just as data points, but as experiential echoes, capturing events with a fidelity that transcended mere visual or auditory records. It held immense data, a living archive of moments in time, specifically those imbued with significant energetic or temporal shifts. This small, dark stone was a witness, a silent observer that had absorbed the very essence of powerful events. But accessing this profound archive was proving to be a challenge, even for Cale's advanced intellect. Kyle projected images of intricate mental pathways, complex energetic locks, and layers of encoded information. It explained that its own energy reserves, still depleted from the crash and the subsequent healing, were insufficient to fully interface with the object. It could sense the information, feel its immense presence, but extracting it, translating it into coherent mental images or concepts, was like trying to drain an ocean with a thimble. The frustration was palpable in Cale's mental state, a low hum of agitated energy that permeated our telepathic link. It was so close, yet so far from unlocking the secrets held within the memory crystal. As Cale struggled, a new, unsettling element began to creep into our isolated existence. I started noticing things. Faint, almost imperceptible lights in the night sky that moved with an unnatural precision, unlike any aircraft I had ever seen. Distant, unusual sounds carried on the desert wind. A low hum, a high-pitched whine, sounds that didn't belong to the natural world. A pervasive feeling of being watched intensified, a prickling sensation on the back of my neck, even in the deepest solitude of the cabin. Kyle sensed it too. Its mental projections shifted, showing me vague, shadowy forms, almost like predators circling their prey. It warned me of other factions, beings or organizations, both terrestrial and off-world, who were intensely interested in such artifacts. These factions, Cale conveyed, were not all benevolent. Some sought knowledge, others sought control, and some simply sought power, viewing these temporal anchors as tools to manipulate timelines for their own gain. Cale further elaborated on these guardians. It explained that throughout Earth's long history, and indeed across the cosmos, certain ancient civilizations had taken on the responsibility of protecting these temporal anchors. Some were indeed benevolent, dedicated to preserving the integrity of timelines and preventing catastrophic divergences. Others, however, had become corrupted, their original purpose twisted into a desire for dominance. These corrupt guardians, Cale implied, were the ones we needed to fear. They were the ones who would stop at nothing to acquire such an object, to harness its power for their own ends. The desert, once my sanctuary, began to feel like an exposed battleground, and I, an unwitting participant in a cosmic struggle. One afternoon, as the sun beat down relentlessly on the cabin, Kyle managed to break through. With a surge of concentrated effort, it accessed a fragment of the object's data, a small burst of information that it immediately projected into my mind. The vision was vivid, overwhelming, and deeply unsettling. It was a scene of immense power and light, but also permeated with an almost unbearable sorrow. I found myself standing on the banks of a river, the air thick with anticipation, the light otherworldly. Figures moved around me, cloaked and ancient, their faces etched with reverence. The landscape was familiar, yet subtly different, as if seen through the mists of time. Then a central figure emerged. He stood in the river, water swirling around his legs, his presence radiating an undeniable aura of peace and authority. He was being immersed by another man, older, with wild hair and eyes that burned with conviction. As the figure was submerged, a burst of blinding light erupted from the heavens. A sound like thunder reverberated through the very ground. The air crackled with energy, and a dove, impossibly bright, descended from the sky. It was a moment of profound cosmic significance, a convergence of spiritual and temporal energies. Yet, beneath the awe, there was that pervasive sorrow, a premonition of suffering and sacrifice. My mind reeled. The figure in the river was unmistakable, even without Cale explicitly identifying him. The vision was too clear, too resonant with images I had seen since childhood. It was Jesus, the baptism of Jesus. I tried to rationalize it, to dismiss it as a hallucination, a dream induced by stress and the strangeness of my situation. But the images were too sharp, too detailed, too imbued with an emotional depth that transcended mere mental projection. This wasn't just a historical event. It was a cosmic event, a moment of immense power that had been captured and preserved within the memory crystal. Kyle, sensing my disbelief and internal struggle, projected a final chilling thought. The information contained within this object it conveyed was critical, not just for understanding our true history, but for avoiding a timeline divergence that could be catastrophic. The vision I had just witnessed was not merely a historical record. It was a pivotal point, a moment that had set a course for humanity, and the memory crystal held the key to understanding that course, and more importantly, to ensuring that humanity remained on it. The weight of this revelation pressed down on me, heavy and inescapable. My quiet life in the desert had just been irrevocably intertwined with the fate of the universe. With a surge of renewed energy, Cale focused its full alien intellect on the obsidian artifact. The subtle glow emanating from the stone intensified, pulsating in sync with Cale's efforts. It was as if two ancient, complex mechanisms were finally aligning, finding the precise frequency to unlock a hidden chamber. I watched, mesmerized, as Cale's form shimmered slightly, a testament to the immense power it was, channeling. Then, with a final, almost audible mental click, the temporal anchor yielded its secrets. Cal projected a clear, detailed memory sequence directly into my mind, a flood of sensory data that bypassed my conscious thought and imprinted itself directly onto my awareness. It was the baptism again, but this time, it was more than just a vision. It was an experience. I was there, not as an observer, but as a participant, feeling the cool water of the Jordan River, hearing the murmur of the crowd, smelling the desert air. But the true revelation was in the energetic signature. Kyle showed me that this was not merely a historical event, a ritualistic cleansing. It was a massive energy surge, a convergence of timelines, a moment when the very fabric of reality was momentarily pliable. The baptism, from Cale's perspective, was a cosmic event, a point of immense temporal and spiritual energy flux, far more significant than any human record had ever conveyed. The descent of the dove, the voice from the heavens. These were not just symbolic occurrences, but manifestations of a profound dimensional shift, a momentary thinning of the veil between realities. Then, Cale shifted the focus, delving deeper into what the object revealed about Jesus himself. The memories within the temporal anchor depicted him not just as a prophet, a teacher, or a man, but as something far more profound, a temporal conduit. He was a being capable of interacting with and influencing different timelines and dimensions, a living bridge between the mundane and the cosmic. His presence at that specific point in time and space, in the Jordan River, was not coincidental. It was a deliberate act of anchoring, a conscious decision to imbue this particular reality with a unique energetic signature. Cale's mental images showed complex energetic pathways emanating from Jesus, intertwining with the very fabric of existence, subtly altering probabilities and future trajectories. He was a linchpin, holding a precarious balance. From this alien perspective, Jesus' true purpose became terrifyingly clear, yet also incredibly hopeful. His teachings, his miracles, his very existence were not simply spiritual lessons for humanity. They served a far grander, more cosmic function: to anchor humanity to a specific, positive timeline. Cale showed me glimpses of alternative futures, timelines where humanity succumbed to self-destruction, endless cycles of war, technological enslavement, or even outright extinction. Jesus, as the temporal conduit, acted as a counterforce, his message of love, compassion, and forgiveness generating a powerful energetic resonance that steered collective human consciousness away from these darker paths. His miracles were not just acts of divine intervention. They were localized temporal corrections, subtle adjustments to the immediate reality to demonstrate the potential for a different, more harmonious existence. And his resurrection. Cale's interpretation was breathtakingly audacious. It was not merely a physical return from death, but a profound timeline correction, a reassertion of the positive trajectory he had established. It was a powerful cosmic statement, demonstrating the possibility of overcoming even the most absolute of endings, reinforcing the chosen timeline against powerful forces seeking to derail it. The object recorded the immense energy expended, the complex dimensional shifts involved in this event, painting a picture of a cosmic struggle for humanity's future. The object Cale found, the Dark Stone, was not just an observer. It was a recording device. Yes, but more accurately, an energy accumulator. It had been left there, at that precise location in the Jordan River, by ancient, benevolent alien observers. Their purpose was to monitor this critical temporal event, to record the energy signatures, the timeline shifts, and the profound impact of Jesus' presence on humanity's collective destiny. It was a cosmic black box, preserving the most crucial moments of our spiritual and temporal evolution. It was a testament to the fact that we were not alone, and that our journey was being watched, and in some cases, gently guided by forces beyond our comprehension. My mind reeled, struggling to integrate this torrent of information. Everything I had ever believed about religion, about the divine, about the very nature of Jesus, was suddenly reframed through a cosmic, scientific lens. It wasn't a contradiction, but an expansion. The spiritual truths were not negated. They were simply understood on a vastly grander, more intricate scale. My questions were endless. If Jesus was a temporal conduit, were there others? What did this mean for free will? Had humanity been steered, or merely given a nudge in the right direction? The implications were staggering, monumental. Cale, sensing my mental overload, projected a powerful, urgent thought. This knowledge, it stressed, was vital, not just for me, but for all of humanity. The object, this temporal anchor, needed to be protected at all costs. There were, Cale reiterated, powerful forces that wanted to suppress this truth, forces that actively sought to manipulate timelines for their own gain. They wanted to obscure the true nature of Jesus' mission, to keep humanity ignorant of its cosmic potential, to prevent us from truly understanding our place in the multidimensional tapestry of existence. The stakes, Cale conveyed, were higher than I could possibly imagine. The fate of our timeline, perhaps even our very existence, hung in the balance. The small dark stone was not just a relic. It was the key to our future, and it was now a target. As Kale's urgent mental projection faded, the reality of its warning began to manifest with chilling precision. The subtle disturbances I had noticed around the cabin, the distant lights and unnatural sounds, now coalesced into a palpable and immediate threat. Unmarked vehicles, their dark silhouettes barely visible against the twilight horizon, were closing in. Their presence was not just a suspicion anymore. It was a certainty. Drones, no longer distant whispers, buzzed overhead with an insistent, mechanical hum, their red and green navigation lights blinking like predatory eyes in the deepening gloom. We were no longer merely being watched. We were being hunted. "We can't stay here," I murmured, the words feeling inadequate against the enormity of the situation. Kyle's mental response was a swift affirmation, an image of imminent danger, a collapsing structure, a suffocating enclosure. The sanctuary of my isolated cabin, which had for so long been my refuge, had become a trap. The temporal anchor, now fully activated and radiating a subtle, warm light, felt like a beacon, drawing our pursuers directly to us. We had to move, and we had to move now. Kale, now significantly stronger from its full interface with the temporal anchor, demonstrated abilities I had only glimpsed before. As I fumbled to gather a few essentials, a ripple of energy emanated from Kale, enveloping us both. The cabin, and by extension, our forms within it, seemed to blur, to become less substantial, almost transparent. It was a form of cloaking, a distortion of light and perception that made us incredibly difficult to discern, even for the sophisticated sensors of the drones hovering above. Our escape was not a mad dash, but a careful, almost ethereal glide through the desert night, Kale guiding me with precise, mental commands, anticipating every movement of our pursuers. Our pursuers, Kale explained through a rapid series of mental images, were not merely a government agency or some rogue military unit. They were a shadowy, terrestrial organization, one that had existed for centuries, operating in the periphery of global power structures. They had long been aware of these temporal artifacts, not just on Earth, but across the solar system, and had systematically sought them out. Their agenda was not about discovery or understanding, but about control. They sought to manipulate history, to rewrite timelines for their own immense power, to ensure their dominance over humanity's future. They were the corrupt guardians Kale had warned me about, the ones who viewed knowledge as a weapon and truth as a malleable commodity. They knew about the temporal anchor. They knew its power, and they would stop at nothing to acquire it. Our goal, Cal communicated with an urgent clarity, was to reach a specific location. Not just any ancient site, but a nexus point. A place imbued with its own powerful ancient energies. A location where the object's information could be safely disseminated or amplified. It was a place where the temporal anchor could connect with the Earth's own energetic grid, allowing its truth to resonate beyond the confines of a single mind. Kyle projected images of an ancient cave system, deep within the Negev desert, a place of immense geological and spiritual significance, long forgotten by most of humanity. This was our destination, our only hope. The journey was a heart-pounding blur of evasion and close calls. The desert, usually a place of quiet solitude, became a labyrinth of shadows and potential threats. We moved under the cover of darkness, Kyle's cloaking abilities our primary defense. There were moments when the beam of a searchlight swept perilously close, moments when the distant growl of an engine seemed to be right on our heels. I could feel the vibrations of heavy vehicles passing nearby, their occupants undoubtedly frustrated by our elusive escape. Kale, with its advanced perception, would anticipate their moves, guiding me through narrow canyons, over rocky outcrops, and into hidden crevices just as their patrols converged on our last known location. My heart hammered against my ribs, a constant drumbeat of fear and adrenaline. I was no soldier, no spy, just a man who had sheltered an alien, and now I was caught in a cosmic chase. As we navigated the treacherous terrain, a moral dilemma began to gnaw at me. Was this the right path? Was revealing this truth, this cosmic reframing of Jesus and human history, truly going to lead to a better future? Or would it simply cause more chaos, more division, more fear? Humanity had struggled with its own truths for millennia, often reacting with violence and rejection to anything that challenged its established beliefs. What would happen when the very foundations of faith and history were shaken to their core by an alien perspective? Would it unite us or tear us further apart? Kyle, sensing my internal conflict, projected an image of a vast, interconnected web of energy. The truth, Kale conveyed, is always necessary. Suppression breeds stagnation, and stagnation leads to decay. Humanity is at a critical juncture. The path forward requires a complete understanding of its past, its potential, and its true place in the cosmos. Ignorance is the greatest weapon of those who seek to control. Kyle's assurance was not a dismissal of my fears, but a firm statement of principle, a belief in the inherent value and necessity of truth, regardless of the immediate consequences. And then, a glimmer of hope. Kyle showed me another brief vision from the temporal anchor, a future timeline where humanity had indeed embraced this wider understanding. It was a future where ancient divisions had dissolved, where scientific and spiritual pursuits were integrated, where technology served the collective good, and where an era of peace and unprecedented progress had dawned. It was a beautiful, inspiring vision, a powerful counterpoint to the immediate danger we faced. It was a future worth fighting for, a future that made the risks we were taking feel justified. With renewed resolve, I pushed forward, fueled by the hope of that vision and the unwavering conviction of my alien companion. The desert night stretched out before us, a vast, silent witness to our desperate flight towards a destiny that would forever alter the course of human understanding. Our desperate flight through the desert night finally led us to the designated nexus point, an ancient, secluded archaeological site nestled deep within the Negev. It wasn't marked on any modern map I knew, a labyrinthine system of natural caves and meticulously carved chambers, long abandoned and reclaimed by the relentless sands. The air here felt different, charged with a subtle hum, an almost imperceptible vibration that spoke of forgotten energies. This was no ordinary ruin. It was a place where the veil between dimensions felt thinner, a place designed by ancient hands to interact with forces beyond our conventional understanding. Kyle, its cloak shimmering as we entered the main cavern, confirmed my intuition with a mental image of swirling energies, converging here from across vast distances and timelines. With a sense of profound purpose, Kale moved to the center of the largest chamber, a circular space with a perfectly smooth, altar-like stone at its core. This, Kale conveyed, was the heart of the Nexus. Carefully, reverently, Kale placed the temporal anchor, the dark, smooth stone from the Jordan River, onto the altar. The moment it made contact, a soft internal light emanated from the stone, growing steadily brighter, pulsating with a gentle rhythm that resonated with the ancient energies of the cave. The air around us began to shimmer, and the faint hum intensified, vibrating through the very bones of the earth. Then the true activation began. The light from the temporal anchors surged, not just illuminating the cavern, but projecting outwards, forming a massive holographic display of information that filled the entire space. It was a breathtaking spectacle, a swirling, three-dimensional tapestry of images, symbols, and energy patterns. This wasn't merely a visual projection, it was a comprehensive history of humanity, seen through the lens of temporal influences and alien observation. Every major historical event, every rise and fall of civilization, every war and every moment of peace was depicted not as isolated incidents, but as intricate threads in a vast interconnected web, constantly influenced by subtle shifts in the temporal fabric. At the very heart of this holographic display, Jesus emerged as the central pivotal figure. The message, amplified by the Nexus, was reinforced with undeniable clarity. He was indeed the timeline anchor. The display showed him as a luminous point of stability, radiating an immense benevolent energy that counteracted chaotic forces attempting to fragment and destroy humanity's potential futures. His life, his teachings, his very presence were not just spiritual guidance, but a practical, cosmic intervention. His message of love, compassion, and forgiveness was depicted as a powerful energetic frequency, aligning our collective consciousness with a path of harmony, preventing a catastrophic future where humanity would have utterly consumed itself. It was a profound reinterpretation, showing that his spiritual wisdom was inextricably linked to the very mechanics of temporal reality, a practical guide for navigating complex, multidimensional existence. But Jesus was not alone in this grand tapestry. The display then expanded, showing that other figures throughout human history, in different cultures and across various continents, had also served similar roles. They were messengers, or minor anchors, individuals who, at critical junctures, had guided their respective societies away from self-destruction, each contributing to the overall stability of the human timeline. Their contributions, though perhaps on a smaller scale than Jesus's, were nonetheless crucial. The display highlighted figures from ancient Eastern philosophies, indigenous spiritual leaders, and forgotten prophets, all working in concert, albeit unknowingly, towards a shared goal: to keep humanity on a path towards its highest potential. It was a humbling revelation, showing that cosmic benevolence was not singular, but multifaceted, constantly nudging humanity towards enlightenment. However, the holographic display also presented a stark, sobering warning. It projected potential future timelines, branching paths that lay ahead for humanity. Some were hopeful, depicting a future of interstellar travel, universal peace, and profound understanding. Others were bleak, showing worlds ravaged by environmental collapse, technological enslavement, and devastating conflicts. These divergent futures were not predetermined. They were direct consequences of humanity's choices, its collective consciousness, and its willingness to embrace or reject the lessons of the past. It was a stark warning about the dangers of division, greed, and the suppression of knowledge, showing how easily our timeline could be derailed by negative choices. The images flashed, a chilling reminder of the precipice upon which humanity stood. Kyle, its form glowing faintly in the projected light, turned to me. Its mental communication was now clearer, more resonant than ever before, amplified by the Nexus. Humanity, it explained, was at a critical juncture, a temporal crossroads. The truth about Jesus, about our cosmic origins, about the interconnectedness of all spiritual and scientific knowledge, was no longer a luxury. It was essential for making the right choices. This knowledge, once understood, could empower humanity to consciously choose its path, to actively steer its own destiny towards the hopeful timelines. It was a call to awakening, a plea for humanity to embrace its true potential and its rightful place in the cosmic order. But just as Kale finished its urgent communication, just as the full, breathtaking message of the temporal anchor was laid bare before my eyes, the ominous buzzing of drones grew deafening. The ground outside vibrated with the heavy crunch of vehicles drawing near. A sudden, blinding beam of light pierced the entrance to the cave, followed by the silhouette of heavily armed figures. The shadowy organization, our relentless pursuers, had found us. They burst into the ancient chamber, weapons raised, their faces grim and determined. The fragile moment of revelation shattered, replaced by the harsh reality of confrontation. The truth had been revealed, but now its protection would demand a desperate fight. The cavern, once bathed in the ethereal glow of cosmic truth, was now plunged into the harsh, artificial glare of tactical flashlights. The air crackled with tension, thick with the metallic scent of fear and the acrid tang of ozone. The holographic display, still shimmering with the last vestiges of Kale's profound revelation, flickered precariously, threatened by the sudden intrusion. Our pursuers, a dozen heavily armed operatives in dark, unmarked uniforms, fanned out, their weapons pointing directly at Kale and me. Their leader, a stern-faced woman, with eyes as cold and sharp as obsidian, stepped forward, her voice cutting through the silence like a razor. "The artifact," she demanded, her gaze fixed on the temporal anchor that still pulsed with a fading light on the altar. "And the alien. Stand down, and no one gets hurt." Kale, its form still shimmering with the residual energy of the Nexus, did not move. Its mental communication to me was swift and resolute. "The mission is complete. The truth has been revealed. Now, the choice is yours." There was no fear in its projection, only a profound sense of accomplishment and an unwavering determination. It had fulfilled its purpose, bringing humanity the critical knowledge it needed. Understanding dawned on me, a chilling realization of Kale's unspoken intent. This was the moment of sacrifice, or at least, the moment of a desperate stand. Kale, with a final surge of its remaining energy, projected a complex thought into my mind. A precise location of an ancient data crystal, a smaller, more portable repository of the core information from the temporal anchor, cleverly hidden within a recess of the altar itself. "Take it. Disseminate the truth. Your world needs it." Before I could fully process the instruction, Kale acted. With a burst of incandescent light that momentarily blinded our assailants, it unleashed a powerful, focused wave of energy. It wasn't an attack designed to kill, but a potent, disorienting force. The operatives were thrown backward, their weapons clattering to the cave floor, their shouts of surprise echoing through the chamber. The light was blinding, the sound a deafening roar, and the very ground beneath us trembled. It was a diversion, a final, magnificent expenditure of Kale's energy, buying me precious seconds. In the chaos, I instinctively dropped to my knees, my hand scrambling over the altar as Kale had shown me. My fingers found the hidden recess, cold and smooth against the rough stone. I felt a small, perfectly smooth crystal, no bigger than my thumb. I snatched it, clutching it tightly in my palm, its surface already warm with stored knowledge. The light from Kyle began to dim, its form flickering, becoming more translucent, as if dissolving into the very air. Its mental presence, once so vivid, started to fade. A gentle whisper in my mind: go, live, share. The operatives, recovering from the initial blast, were already regaining their footing, their shouts turning to enraged commands. Don't let him escape! Get the artifact! There was no time to mourn, no time to look back. Fueled by Kale's sacrifice and the immense weight of the crystal in my hand, I scrambled away from the altar, dodging the recovering agents. The cavern, now a scene of utter bedlam, offered a fleeting chance. I knew the layout of these ancient tunnels better than they did, thanks to Kale's earlier mental guidance. I plunged into a narrow, winding passage, the sounds of shouting and gunfire erupting behind me. My heart pounded, not just from exertion, but from the raw grief of loss and the terrifying exhilaration of escape. I could hear them pursuing, their heavy boots thudding against the rock, but the labyrinthine passages were my ally. I ran until my lungs burned, until my legs ached, until the sounds of pursuit faded into the distant echoes of the cave system. Eventually, I emerged into the cool desert night, miles from the nexus point, under a sky ablaze with 1,000,000 indifferent stars. The world felt different. The air tasted different. Everything was irrevocably altered. Kyle was gone, its mission fulfilled, its existence a fleeting, brilliant comet that had illuminated my life and then vanished. Now, I am in hiding, not back in my old cabin, which I know would be thoroughly compromised, but in a new, undisclosed location, a small, nondescript apartment in a bustling city far from the desert. From here, I watch the news. I read the reports, searching for any hint, any whisper of what transpired that night in the Negev. There are vague reports of an unexplained seismic event, of unusual atmospheric disturbances, quickly dismissed by authorities. No mention of an alien, no mention of an ancient artifact, no mention of the truth that nearly tore my world apart. The shadowy organization has done its work, suppressing the official narrative, burying the truth beneath layers of plausible deniability. The burden of what I know is immense, a crushing weight on my soul. This small data crystal, clutched so tightly in my hand during my escape, contains the essence of Kale's revelation, the cosmic truth about Jesus, about humanity's true history, about our potential futures. It is a truth that rewrites religion, redefines science, and challenges every preconceived notion about our place in the universe. But how do I share this? Who will believe me? I am just one man, an ordinary individual who stumbled into an extraordinary secret. The world is not ready, not yet, for such a profound paradigm shift. But Kale's sacrifice, its unwavering belief in the necessity of truth, demands that I try. I cannot let its mission be in vain. I have this information now. This truth about Jesus, about our past and our future. I need your help to get it out there, to make sure Kale's sacrifice wasn't in vain. I will share what I can, piece by agonizing piece, through every available channel, knowing that the forces of suppression are vast and powerful, but the truth, once unleashed, has a way of finding its own path. This is just the beginning. I've only scratched the surface of what I learned from Kale and the temporal anchor. There's so much more to tell about the other messengers who guided humanity through the ages, about the real, multi-dimensional history of Earth, and what's coming next for our species as we stand at this critical temporal crossroads. Subscribe, hit that notification bell, because the next part of this story, it will change everything you thought you knew about your own